So good evening. Welcome to St. Mary's. Happy Easter. Okay. My name is Matt, and I'm one of the leaders here. And I'm very, very glad to welcome you here today. Today is, in fact, a very good day if your name is Hannah or Dave. And if you work in our office, that is Hannah and Dave who work in office, Hannah and Dave edit our Sunday talks, and they put them onto YouTube for us. That's what they do. And so those of us who preach at St. Mary's, we work hard to think theologically and culturally, to apply the Holy Scriptures to our 21st century London context with nuance and grace, to stimulate the intellect and to stir the heart, to move people to respond to Jesus and the Holy Spirit. And Dave and Hannah's jobs is to take this deep, mysterious, profound work and turn it into internet clickbait. And today is a good day if your name is Dave or Hannah, because I have done your clickbait work for you. And with the help of ChatGPT, I have even made the thumbnail too. And so today's talk, if you're making notes, I know none of you are making notes, is called, Are You Ready for the Zombie Apocalypse? That is an attractive bunch of zombies. Even Andy as the undead has great hair. I think as good as ChatGPT is, it's fair to say we are going to miss having Hannah doing our graphic design, aren't we, while she's on maternity leave. Now, I think we've probably had enough of that. Actually, this talk, it's inspired by a conversation that I had at the evening service a couple of months ago. So I was speaking with someone who walked into Francis Holland School for the very first time, and I met them at the end of the service. And I'll paraphrase what they said, but they said basically, I cannot explain why, but I feel like I'm meant to be here. But I have questions about the Bible. I have questions about the whole God thing. And so I asked, what sort of questions do you have? And they said, well, in the Gospels, and Jesus is raised from the dead, and it says that other people came out of their tombs at the same time. What am I meant to do with that? I'm not sure that I can get on board with that. And I thought, that's a really good question, because it's a really honest question, isn't it? Because if you are new to all of this, I think it's fair to ask, what kind of story is this that I'm being invited into? Or even, do I have to leave my intellect at the door to believe this? Or to navigate the whole Christian life? And I think, to be honest, even if you've been around the church for a while, this is just one of those passages where you think, did that really just say that? And so this talk is for that person, and for anyone else who is not quite sure what to do with this account. And so in the run-up to Easter, we looked at the cross from various angles, at what Jesus has achieved through his death. And today, we're doing exactly the same. We're going to be reading from Matthew's Gospel. And what you'll see is that this very particular moment, it actually straddles the death and the resurrection, which I think makes sense, really. Because in the New Testament, the cross and resurrection, they're not separate acts, but one continuous victory over death. So this is from Matthew chapter 27, verse 50 to 54. And when Jesus had cried out in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit, which means he died. And at that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split, and the tombs broke open. The bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared to many people. When the centurion and those who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified and exclaimed, "Surely he was the Son of God." So this part of Matthew's account, it doesn't quite follow in a straight line chronologically. So Jesus dies, the curtain in the temple is torn in two, the earth shakes, the rock splits, the tombs are broken open, and then of course the people rise. The bodies of many people, holy people, were raised to life. And then Matthew sort of fast forwards into Sunday. And so they then come out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection, and then they go into Jerusalem and they appear to many people. And then he brings us back to Friday again, where the centurion looks at everything that's happened and says, surely this was the Son of God. And so what is clear in this often skipped over passage is that Matthew does not slow down to explain it. He doesn't tell us who these holy people were. He doesn't tell us how long they were around, because, of course, Jesus rises and then he ascends into heaven, never to die again. But, what happens to them? He does not tidy it up, which is interesting, isn't it? And I think it suggests that for Matthew, this just isn't the main point. It's not what he wants to talk about. This is just part of something far bigger, far more important. So look at what he actually describes. So when Jesus dies, the curtain in the temple, it's torn in two. The earth shakes, the rock splits, the tomb opens, the dead are raised to life. It's a bit like a shock wave through the cosmos, emanating from the cross. Like everything just starts reacting to this very moment. And if you know the Old Testament, as many of Matthew's readers would have, you'd realize that none of this is actually random. This is all God's doing. Matthew wants his readers to know that God is the one who is doing all of this. So the curtain in the temple, it's torn from top to bottom, as if to say only God could tear it from up at the top. And so the barrier between God and humanity, it is ripped open. The God who dwells in the Holy of Holies has ripped the curtain and he's left the building. Not to abandon the people, but to come closer still. The earth shakes, and it's like when God comes down on Mount Sinai. But God has not come to make a new covenant on a mountain. He's establishing one through the cross. The rocks split and the tombs open. The bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. And so it's like the prophet Zechariah spoke of, about how God was walking upon the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem. It's the main cemetery in the first century, still used to this day. And that mountain is splitting, and the holy ones are coming with him. It's like God's left the building, and now he's raiding the grave. Jesus is taken outside the city to die. And so the unclean is kept at a distance from the holy city. And the pilgrims gathered for the feast of unleavened bread are all there. They're kept separate. So the tombs, they would have been marked really carefully to protect people and their very fragile holiness, so that no one would accidentally touch death and become ceremonially unclean. But now, the once dead holy ones come back into the city. And it's a bit like Ezekiel's vision of dry bones, hopeless dry bones coming to life, the breath of God filling what was dead. Matthew is saying that God is doing something here, and everything will change as a result. A whole new world is emerging, a whole new reality. This world has been completely undone and remade. And everything that looked fixed and settled starts to give way. So the barrier between God and humanity is gone. The very ground that they were standing on, it's shaken. And even the most final, most immovable reality we know, death, starts to loosen. It stops behaving like it's in charge. And so from God to creation to death itself, it's like every layer of reality is being caught up in what God is doing. This is a moment where the normal rules just don't seem to apply anymore, where things that were shut away and buried are no longer shut away, no longer buried. The things that look completely final are no longer final. Because when Jesus dies and rises, something begins to undo the way things have always been. And it doesn't leave anything untouched. Which means even the things that look completely impossible may not be as final as you thought. Jesus Christ is risen from the dead. And the Christian contention is that you have to take that claim seriously. It's not optional. We're not talking about a metaphor. or a spiritual idea or a symbol of hope. The actual bodily resurrection of Jesus is key to our faith. The Apostle Paul says, if Christ has not been raised, our preaching is useless, and so is your faith. In other words, if this isn't true, all of this is a waste of time. So if you have walked in today for the first time, never been to church before, if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, we are wasting our time right now. You should really pity us. You should feel sorry for us. We could be having a drink in the pub right now, but we're here. Now, Christians believe the resurrection not out of some sort of projected wish fulfillment, but because we think it best explains what actually happened. And it has been examined from every angle, historically, philosophically, in terms of human experience. It takes history seriously. It looks closely at the accounts that we have. It asks real questions about life and meaning. And it makes sense of what people have experienced. And so many people have tried to explain it away, tried to disprove it, tried to dismantle it. And many of those same people have ended up being convinced by it, myself included. Now, I've not got time to go into all of that now, but we run a course here called the Life Course where you can explore this for yourself. Week 4 is all about the claims for the resurrection, and you can hear the talk online if you'd like to, and you can't wait. But this is the point for today. If this claim is true, if Jesus really has been raised from the dead, then what you thought was the end in your life may not be the end at all. What you think is dead and buried and sealed and immovable might not be as final as you thought. If Jesus is risen from the dead, you never know what God might do next. I'm in a WhatsApp group with a few fellow Arsenal supporters. It's been a pretty good season up until about a month ago. And like any group, there's a real mix of personalities in there. There are those who will not allow anything to quell their belief that this is our season. There are those who are more quietly optimistic, and then there is one loud voice who is very quick to point out every injury, every injustice, every poor performance, and is very quick to predict that it's all about to fall apart. It's all about to fall apart. We call them Nelly Debbie, which is a combination of negative Nelly and Debbie Downer. Now, you don't need to know who Nelly Debbie is. Oh, how did that get there? No, that's not meant to be there. John, I'm so sorry. Let me just get rid of that. Ah! Such a cheap joke. I really enjoyed that this morning and this evening. The point is that life actually has a way of training us to expect the worst, doesn't it? That we start to expect things just simply will not change. And over time, that just leaves us feeling hopeless. And I think if we're honest, that there are often things in our lives that don't just feel disappointing. They feel like the end. Things that feel completely stuck. Things that feel beyond any hope. Like relationships that have broken down, and we just can't see any way to repair or reconcile it. Or perhaps like that mistake that you made, that failure, and you just wonder, like, I don't even know how to move forward from here. Or perhaps it's a health concern that drains you physically, but if you're honest, it's the mental toll that comes with it. It's far worse. Or the grief and the loss that we experience, we just wonder, am I just going to feel this way forever? Or perhaps it's the patterns in your own life. Things that you've tried really hard to shift. Things that you've tried to change, and somewhere along the way you've just settled on, this is just who I am, isn't it? And of course, it's not just the personal things, is it? There's things in our world that feel fixed. Wars that just don't seem to end. Where tensions just escalate week on week on week. Hyperbolic and real threats of total annihilation. And the consequences just ripple out across the whole world. And you look at it and you just think, what could possibly change that? And then we just come to the conclusion, this is just how things are now. There's a theologian called Leslie Newbigin who was once asked whether he was an optimist or a pessimist about the future, to which he replied saying, "I am neither an optimist nor a pessimist. Jesus Christ is risen from the dead." How about you? You see, optimism is great, but we can't think our way into everything being okay. Because evil is real, and death is real, and suffering is real. We see it in our world, we feel it in our lives. Good Friday is real. And pessimism, it can feel like wisdom, it can feel safer, a way to hedge against our own disappointment. It can feel like, well, I've seen it all, but it doesn't mean you have. Because the tomb is empty. Easter is also real. Death doesn't win. Evil doesn't get the last word. Suffering is not the end of the story. And so we're not pretending that this isn't real, but we're also not calling it final either. You see, if Jesus is risen from the dead, you never know what God might do next. You never know what God might do. New life is still at work, shaking tombs open. Let me tell you some stories about tombs that have been opened. I've got a friend called Joel. He used to be a worship leader at this church. He was originally from Australia, and he has gone back since. But he went to a church very similar to St. Mary's when he was in Australia and did a mission trip out into the bush, into the outback to basically work among Aboriginal people there. And they were doing a service much like we would do here at St. Mary's, and they're asking for prophetic words. What's your sense what God might want to do? And Joel has come into his head, somebody's got a hurt finger. And so he says, a hurt finger. Somebody responds to the hurt finger, and they come up and they reveal their finger is missing. That was more than he bargained for. And so he goes, okay, with the little faith that he had for it, and he placed his hand over this man's hand, and he prayed in the name of the resurrected Jesus, finger be healed. And he felt the finger grow out underneath his hand. Took the hand away, and there was a brand new finger where one had not been before. As you might imagine, that became the story of the week because everybody knew this guy before, and they knew him afterwards as well. Joel went back the next year in order to do another mission trip, and he met this guy, and he shared his story. He said, that's nothing. The reality is, I'd actually been physically abusing my wife for many years. But in that healing process, something changed within me. I placed my wedding ring back upon my finger, and I sought forgiveness. And I repented, and I've been reconciled with my wife. What are we meant to do with this whole new world we are living in? If Jesus is risen from the dead, you just never know what he might do next. Off the last life course, somebody shared their story of being on the weekend away. And they came to the weekend away with the knowledge of a massive family trauma that had taken place, a massive rupture in their whole family. And they were coming up for ministry, and this pain is bubbling up beneath them. Somebody comes on the weekend away and shares a word. This person had not done the course. He doesn't go to this church. He's my friend, and I invited him along because he's fun. He came along. He prayed for this person, said, this is such a weird word. I don't know what to make of it. But I've got, God is handing out multicolored ice pops to you. And that sounds really weird, doesn't it? But to the person sharing this story, he has this image in his grandfather's house of him and all of his cousins eating multicolored ice pops together. And that image has been marred by the breakdown and rupture that has taken place. But God is giving out the ice pops. What are we meant to do with this new world? If Jesus is risen from the dead, you just never know what God is going to do next. When I was at university, I experienced anxiety and claustrophobia. Couldn't take the tube, couldn't take the bus, couldn't sit in lectures for a whole year. Came up for prayer after a service one time, and somebody prayed for my anxiety and my claustrophobia. I had to take the train later that day, and I didn't have an Oyster card because I don't take the train. But I thought I'm going to give this a go, and I took the train, and I've taken the train ever since. Anxiety and claustrophobia gone forever. What are we meant to do with this world we're now living in? If Jesus Christ is risen from the dead, you never know what he's going to do next. Last week, Easter Sunday, I was greeted by a massive smile from somebody who came to the morning service who said, it's my anniversary. And I said, what do you mean it's your anniversary? And apparently, the year before Easter Sunday at the morning service, they had come to faith, come to know Jesus. Who are the people in your life who you've been praying for that you want them to meet with Jesus? In this new world we're living in, Jesus Christ is risen from the dead. You never know what God is going to do next. When I became a Christian, the first book I read as a new Christian was called God's Smuggler by a guy called Brother Andrew. And this was during the time of the Cold War. He was a Dutch missionary, and he tried to take Bibles, smuggling them beyond the Iron Curtain into the Soviet Union and so on. He would fill his car, the boot, the back seat, the front seat, the glove compartment, with Bibles in order to resource the church who were being quashed behind the Iron Curtain. And he would get to a gate entering into there. There's soldiers there. They want to check the car to make sure you're not taking things from the West in there. And they open the boot. And so many times he tells this story. Basically, they look in the boot. It's full of Bibles, but they can't see anything. What are we meant to do with this world? If Jesus Christ is risen from the dead, you just never know what God is going to do next. I thought some of those were good. These are just a few stories, but they all point to the same thing. What looked finished wasn't. Because if Jesus is risen from the dead, you never know what God might do next. So what do we do with this strange moment where the tombs open and the dead walk out? And maybe the answer, like Matthew, isn't to tidy it up. Maybe it is to recognize that it is a sign that something has happened, that God has done something and it has changed what is possible, that things that were sealed aren't sealed anymore, that things that we thought were final or dead might not be. So what about you? What have you quietly decided is over? A relationship? Have you come to believe that there's a ceiling on your work or what God has called you to that you can't break through? Is there a situation that I just can't see that changing? That's the limit. Because if Jesus is risen from the dead, you never know what God might do next. Amen? Let's stand. We'll worship.